In the first, second, and third grade, we are learning to read. From the fourth grade on, we're reading to learn.
When that child hits third and fourth grade and he has not learned to read, he or she is struggling.
Hey, it's Dr. Phil, and you found your way back to fill in the blanks. Sadly, the interest to become a teacher or remain a teacher is really the worst that it's been in our nation's history. And we're going to tackle the teacher shortage, low standards, student whining, and new requirements in states like Arizona and Florida that passed what critics call the warm body law to put unqualified people in classrooms as teachers. Now, other states are pushing universities to expedite teacher certifications. Now, some districts are hiring student teachers who are still enrolled in college to be full-time first-year teachers. Now, speaking with me today is someone I'm a big fan of, Dr. Ingrid Haynes-Traylor. Served 2 decades in P-12 public education as a teacher and administrator, and now serves as the director of the National Literacy Institute. She also teaches bachelor's, master's, and doctoral level literacy courses and has published books and numerous journal articles on literacy instruction. Now, she actively researches best practices in literacy instruction for at-risk students and conducts literacy training and workshops across the nation to build instructional capacity in teachers who teach our most fragile learners. So, welcome, Ingrid.
Thank you.
Listen, I've got so many things that I want to talk to you about, and you have so much information about this literacy. We had the opportunity to visit before, and I hope we have more time to visit even after this. I was absolutely stunned at the state of literacy in America. This is something that you deal with every single day. How in the world did we get in the situation that we're in? And I'll preface it by saying, you say there are 130 million adults unable to read a simple story to their children at the end of the day.
Yeah.
How is that possible?
Listen, I don't know. It's so many things have happened. One, what's recently happened was COVID, right? And that changed the dynamics of how we do school. I mean, never, this is going on 30 years with me teaching. Never did I teach kindergarten, first graders, online. So that was the issue. So many of our babies are already coming to school with a deficit reading. So many of our teachers, Dr. Phil, I know I'm getting ready to be on this hot seat, but so many of our teachers do not know how to teach literacy. Many of them are learning as they go, and many of them are learning through programs of teaching literacy. So it's they do not know. It's in everything. If you go to secondary, you'll have secondary teachers. They would tell me, "Oh, I'm just a science teacher. I'm just a math teacher." And I'm thinking, okay, well, if they can't read your science experiment project or whatever, then they won't be able to do what you want them to do in that particular area. So it has been one thing after the next. COVID hit. Many of our programs are not preparing teachers to teach literacy. I've worked in higher education, and you look at the degree plan of 120 hours, you may have one literacy course, one math content course, one math science course, right? And so here it is, they get thrust into the school system. And look, Dr. Phil, we don't tell them that you may get a class of 30, and of the 30, you may have 8 to 9 to 12 kids reading on different grade levels. Because if we did that, they wouldn't stay in the profession. So we have to make it seem like it's wonderful, it's going to be okay. Then all of a sudden, we throw them in first, second, third grade, and they start calling me, Dr. Ingrid, what is going on? Half my babies can't read. And then when you talk to parents, many of our parents are leaving it up to the schools to do it all. We are our children's first teachers. You should be going into the classroom telling that teacher, this is how my child learns best. He likes to be read this way, or he likes these type of stories. But a lot of our parents are leaving it all up to the schools, and that's not working.
Well, let me ask you something. One of the things you said that just really stuck with me, and I thought you expressed it so well. I had made the comment that if you're not reading on grade level at the end of the third grade, that the risk of dropping out before graduation was 4 times normal unless you were low socioeconomic, and then it was 6 times normal. And you said there's a reason for that. I wrote the quote down and I've repeated it many times. I threatened to take credit for it when you weren't around, but I haven't yet. I've always given you credit. You said in the first, second, and third grade, we are learning to read.
Absolutely.
And from the fourth grade on, we're reading to learn.
Absolutely.
I thought that was so insightful. And I think back to my kids and to the extent I can remember myself, that is so right. Those first years, you're learning to read. It doesn't matter what you're reading, you're just learning to read the words. But then after that, you're reading to learn the content that they give you in science or math or government or whatever. And if you haven't picked up the skill, you're lost.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And listen, Dr. Phil, the teacher doesn't have time. I mean, she has all this other information. Here it is. I'm in third grade and I absolutely need phonics. I absolutely need phonemic awareness. If I can't decode the word, how can I comprehend the text? But we don't have time because that's where we get in those reading passages, and that's when we get in those standardized tests that hit third grade. And so when that child hits third and fourth grade and he has not learned to read, he or she is struggling. A lot of the research says he or she will never catch up. It's just like we're just chasing numbers.
So how does a parent determine that their child is falling behind in reading at home? What can you tell a parent to see if their child is falling behind and they need to do something remedial?
I hate to say this. I know I'm going to get in trouble, but I stay in trouble. Dr. Phil, the parents know. I haven't really met a parent who doesn't know that their kid is not reading on grade level. They know that it's something. The problem is, now that I know that he's not reading or she's not reading on grade level, how do I go in to express to the teacher that I need help and then the teacher be able to give me support? How do I bridge this relationship? Right? How do I, how do I let that parent know that, he's not reading in a way where she can still trust me as the educator? And then how as a parent, I'm not blaming the educator because my child is not reading on grade level. I do a lot of parent literacy nights. I really hadn't met a parent who didn't really know that the baby, they all come in kindergarten. When I was a principal, oh, Miss Ingrid, my baby's reading on 20th grade level. I'm just teasing, reading on 9th grade level, right? And then all of a sudden I said, well, bring the book that he reads. And it's the same book that he's read every night as a baby. So of course he can read that book, without any problems. But then as the year progressed throughout the year, that's when they start noticing the grades and they start noticing, oh, my child is struggling on certain sounds and on the spelling test. So a lot of times they just don't know how to ask for help. And then there is a disconnect between that school and that home. I think we got to bridge relationships. A lot of times my parents, they tell me I'm scared to ask, or I don't feel like I can ask for help. That's what I'm noticing. So, Dr. Phil, I hadn't really met a parent that told me they didn't know that the baby was struggling.
Really?
Oh no, they know.
How much difference has it made that we are in a double income society now where both parents are outside the home working?
Listen, it's changed the dynamics. I'm 21, Dr. Phil, and you're 22. Somebody was at home more with you, helping you in your schoolwork. Both of my parents are highly educated and they were in education. But when they started having children, someone sort of stayed home to support us. It's a lot of us, and someone stayed home to help us. Now you have both parents trying to live this American dream. And again, they're leaving it all up to the teachers to do everything. And so I think that has made a tremendous impact or issue in our children. Both parents are working. When I was a principal, Doc, let me tell you something. Let's say I needed to speak to a parent about the baby. Sometimes I would get the older sibling. They would say, well, my mama and daddy are working, and so I'm coming. So let's say, there's a third grader. I got the sixth grader coming to talk to me about the third grader. So I would end up telling the parents, no, one of you all got to come talk to me. And so I think it's made an issue in how we do things at home with children. And so, yeah, they're both working. I ask parents, how often do you read to your baby? How often do you have conversations with your children? Think about it, Dr. Phil. Like I said, you're 22, I'm 21. I have an 18-year-old who just won this year the Apple Swift Award. Well, watch this. When he comes home, he wants to say one word. Son, how was your day? Good. No. How was your day? What did you do? What happened at school? It's like I'm having to pull it out of him, but I know that I have to pull it out of him. A lot of parents accept that. A lot of parents, say he's in his room, and the students go days without having a conversation with the parents. That's unacceptable.
My parents always told me, they said, you can argue as long as you want, as long as it's respectful. The second you get disrespectful, the conversation is over. But you can debate till hell wouldn't have it as long as it is respectful. So I really developed some great early debating and negotiation skills because the channel was open as long as I didn't get mouthy.
And if you look at these new day kids, as we call them, the Z kids, they are very expressive. And a lot of us, if you're my age, sometimes I think it's talking back, but they think of it as expressing themselves and having a viewpoint. And so I'm with you with being able to debate and using your words to express yourself. But then you have a lot of educators, Dr. Phil, that feel like, listen, that's disrespectful. I said no, and it's no, and that's it. And it's a lot of cultural piece behind that as well. And so I'm so with you. Yeah. Dr. Phil, I got an 18-year-old. And he loves to converse back and forth with me on his opinion. And now that he's won all these awards and he's designing apps, Dr. Phil, he thinks he knows more than I know. But I'm grateful for the conversation. I'm grateful that we can have the interchange where he can, I guess, talk to me like he's on the same level as me. Yeah.
You say that parents sometimes lack the tools and teachers lack the tools to teach all of these kids. But I wrote down some of the things you said and then some of the things that I've found. And let me run over these for our listeners right now.
Okay.
Literacy data and impact on nation and economy. You said 130 million adults are unable to read a simple story to children. 21% of adults are illiterate in 2022. 45 million are functionally illiterate and read below the fifth grade level. 44% of adults don't read a book in a year. 3 out of 4 on welfare can't read. And 20% of Americans read below the level needed to earn a living wage. That is really troubling to me that we have such high percentages of people that can't functionally read. Now, these are people that are out of school. Is there any kind of plan? Because competitively, how do these people ever get out of poverty? How do they ever get out of paycheck to paycheck, particularly now when affordability is such an issue? If these people don't have the ability, if they don't have the literacy skills, how do we fix that for our American population?
So a lot of organizations like myself have moved into doing financial literacy, health literacy sessions and all of that. And it's just for the adults, right? To try to provide resources and support. I do ELL classes. So we are trying to now focus on the adults and providing them with tools and resources. But it's that financial literacy, it's that health literacy, it's just that day in functioning literacy that you need to be able to survive. So a lot of organizations like myself are trying to go in and provide and partner with stakeholders and providing adults with those resources to be able to help themselves and help their children.
You estimate that the literacy cost American taxpayers an estimated $20 billion a year.
20 billion. And all the resources that we have to provide, yes. And the dropout rate and support to students that are reading, the interventions and support that we have to provide to teachers and students who are reading below grade level. Yes.
Yeah, you said school dropouts cost the nation $240 billion
$40 billion
in social service expenditures and lost tax revenues.
And all the support, yes.
That is stunning. 3 out of 5 people in prison can't read, and that some of the prisons project their current bed needs in future years based on students' reading tests.
3rd grade.
They look at their 3rd grade reading levels, and they can use that to project how many prison beds they're going to need going forward.
Doc, most of the research says that 3rd grade, if I'm not reading on grade level, the read to learn to read. It's difficult for me to catch up. It gets more difficult. I like what you said. It's like we're chasing a train. It's just, and a lot of times there's a correlation with those 3rd graders not reading on grade level to looking at those 3rd graders becoming juvenile offenders. Those numbers are, there's a, not only a direct correlation, but there's a high correlation that those students sometimes, get involved in situations that they should not. And a lot of times it's because they lacked literacy skills. One of my students did a recent study with juvenile offenders, and we did a qualitative study. And we went in to interview these babies who had committed really harsh crimes. And so one of the questions was like, when did you realize that, you were struggling with reading or struggling with school? Dr. Phil, do you know a lot of the babies there said kindergarten and 1st grade, they knew that there was a difference with them performing in school?
Really?
We were thinking they were going to say, I don't know, 3rd grade. But the student as we were conducting the research, a lot of the population, the children that we went in to interview said that kindergarten, 1st grade, that they realized that they were not reading or performing. And then they went on to say it was in kindergarten, 1st grade that a teacher told them that they were not going to, said negative things to them. So I often tell teachers, be careful of what you say.
Oh my God, yes. 85% of juvenile offenders have reading problems. So,
yeah.
And again, that's that acting out thing. But I have to tell you, I can't add 2 and 2 and get 5 every time. I've just never been good at math. It's something I've struggled with all my life. But for some reason, I discovered around maybe 6th or 7th grade, maybe a little bit earlier, I don't know, that I could read really fast and comprehend really well. I don't know why, because I'd struggle so much in math, but I'd get all my textbooks the first day of school and I'd read them all that weekend. And that has served me so well in my life. Every day I have to prepare for 2 shows the next day, and I get show books that are 250 pages that I have to read at night. I have to say, if there's one thing that I think has been a really foundational building block in my success, it is the ability to read really fast and comprehend at a really high rate. My whole life, it's served me.
And then, Dr. Phil, everyone says they can be a teacher. Everyone. It's more than just teaching the content. It's teaching and managing and motivating and bridging. It's a whole lot of stuff. You got 30 different personalities in that classroom. You may have 5 to 6 different abilities in that classroom. Oh, man. So it does something to me if I'm in the streets and someone has all the answers for us as teachers. And then they say, well, what I would do. No, do it first. And then let me see. I went in, let me make you laugh. I went in last year and I did a model a lesson, right? I think I'm an expert. Dr. Phil, I went in to model a lesson with middle schoolers. I had never sweated so hard in my life. I was sweating. It did not go well. And I was modeling to teachers. And so I laughed, because I went in thinking one thing, right? And the teachers sat back like, Dr. Ingrid, what would you do? It was just, I ended up saying, you know what? secondary is difficult. So let's figure out how to work together. And I told the principal, let's do something else because I now understand what this teacher is experiencing when trying to teach the students. And so my team and myself, we laughed about that whole experience. Dr. Phil, I tell you, it was so difficult going in. I said, I imagine what substitute teachers, how they feel going in. Yes. The students let me know quickly I was not the main teacher.
Of
I
course.
did ask, I had some problems with classroom management. I was surprised because I really had a good lesson. I had some students that just tell me they didn't want to participate. I had a student, and no matter how good the lesson was, I had a student to leave the class. I had to go out the class to ask him what was wrong. He did come back in, but this is what he told me. He said he didn't make the basketball team and he was in a bad mood. Mm-hmm. So I said, maybe next year you'll make the team, but hey, let's come back in the classroom. So yeah, Dr. Phil, it's difficult.
And you don't know what they've come from at home either. So they all bring all of that to school with them.
The only good thing that happened from that lesson is the fact that I found out that he didn't make the basketball team, and that's the reason why he was cutting up during my lesson. But we had a soft conversation about basketball and trying out next year and whatever case may be. Dr. Phil, he came back in the class and said, I'll do what you asked me to do. When I originally asked him to do something, he said no and walked out and said, you're not the teacher. And then when we went outside to talk about what was going on, he told me we came back in. Now that to me, with the principal and I talked about, that's a seasoned educator. A new educator would have thought, let me write him up. Let me put him out because he was disrespectful. But the issue was that he did not make the team. And a lot of times teachers don't realize these kids have feelings. These kids, some days they have bad days. He was having a bad day. And it's not necessarily a behavior problem, which we got to put him out and write him up and kick him out of school. But he didn't make the basketball team. And for some kids, playing sports is very important.
Well, maybe it was that day that you remembered telling your coach if he didn't start you, you were out of there.
See, listen, Doc, he said he would never forget me. I was like, hey, but that was my burning question. I hadn't seen him in years. I was like, why didn't you play me? Yes. But so look, I could relate to that child's story.
Of course.
Yes, which is relate to his experience. Yes.
Well, everything you're saying makes so much sense. And I want parents to really hear what you're saying here and to pay attention to whether their child is reading on grade level or not. Pay attention let me put my psychology hat on here for a minute and pay attention as to whether or not your child is showing some departures from baseline or not. Because if they're starting to act out or if they're experiencing something where they're being withdrawn or they're starting to show some emotions you're not used to seeing or whatever that could be distracting them, ask those questions and don't take nothing or no for an answer, because what you said was so profound. The first 3 years they learn to read. From there on, they read to learn. And whatever it takes, you've got to close that gap because it will cost them money. It will cost them years off their life. It will cost them so many things if they don't complete that education and move on into their lives.
Dr. Phil, let me also give another resource for parents, and it may seem very small, but there is this thing called the Dolch word list. You've probably seen it with your babies or grandbabies, and they have a number of words per grade level. And so a lot of times it starts off with pre-primer, and it goes up until I think third or fourth, maybe up to sixth grade. And that's a good indicator to see where your baby is. If you give that list to your baby, he's sitting in third grade right now, midway, he should know the majority of those words on that list. If he does not, that's when you need to say, well, let me sort of give some more attention to it. But there is a set of words, because you know that most of our textbooks, no matter what, are written on, eighth grade level, right? It's not until masters and the doctorate that you get those level or tier 4 words, those specialized words. But most of those words we'll see over and over again. And so that Dolch word list gives those parents an indicator where their baby is as it relates to vocabulary. And so that's a good resource that I've given out to parents.
Okay, and let me ask you, what is that called?
It's called the Dolch word list. My Southern dialect is DOLCHE, Dolch word list.
Okay. All right, we're going to put that on the website. Now, let me ask you a couple things in closing here. And if you don't have this on the top of your head, just give me your best estimate or remembrance. Most newspapers are written at what grade level?
Oh, God.
I think it's about 5th grade.
Yeah.
Okay.
Most of our textbooks are not going past 8th grade unless you, like I said, getting your master's or your doctorate. Then you get those tier 4 words. But we're mostly in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 vocabulary words. Yeah. Your high frequency words. Your high frequency.
Tier 4 words are going to be in doctoral level textbooks, etc. When you talk about what level of 5th grade, 8th grade level, are we talking about how many words are in a sentence and how many syllables are in the words? How do they define what level something is at? Does that have to do with the number of words per sentence?
No.
Or the number of syllables in the words? How do they decide what's at the 5th grade level?
So, Dr. Phil, some of our words are phonetically, right? We can pronounce them by decoding them. And then our other set of words are our sight words or our high frequency words.
Right.
So they're in 2 categories. So so you have a set of words where we're teaching the students the phonics skills or phonics generalization rules. For an example, in kindergarten, we have the CBC rule and the words like at. But then you also teach the kids, we may have words that are rule breakers. And those rule breakers, a lot of times, are our sight words, like WAS is a sight word. THE is a sight word. And so you have between 500 to 1,000 sight words. And then you have these words that we pronounce phonetically. And so that's what they mean. Does that make so? If you can't decode the word, and that word is not a sight word, then that's how we have a problem with comprehension. Does that make sense? So you should be able to look at that word, determine if it's a sight word, or determine if you have to use one of your rules to pronounce the word. Now, the problem also, Dr. Phil, is that the English language is the most difficult language to learn because we have so many borrowed words. A lot of our second language or ELL students, they can pick up reading and speaking different languages real quick. But when it's English, it's like, oh, doc, that's where it's hard. That's where it's difficult because they have problems with the vocabulary. Does that make sense? So that's what they mean.
Yeah, because it always drove me crazy when I was trying to explain to my grandkids how you pronounce tour like a band going on tour. You pronounce for as for and sour as sour, but they're all spelled O-U-R. There's 3 different pronunciations. It's S-O-U-R, T-O-U-R, F-O-U-R. Only difference is the first letter, and they're pronounced 3 different ways. And my grandkids were saying, okay, explain this to me. I said, no, I don't think so. I need to go.
Yeah. And what we do now is we'll say, what's the origin of the word? And that's the reason why it's pronounced that way. But look, what the other thing that's interesting with learning to read, Doc, is our dialects. I'm from the South.
Right.
And they say we have 44 phonemes. But Dr. Phil, sometimes, depending on where you're from, you go down to about 20 phonemes, diphthongs, and things of that nature. So all of that plays a role. Funny story. No, it's time to go. My neighbor said, Doc, I'm going to go get some Earl. I'm going to put Earl in my car from NTB. I sat there. I said, wow, okay. And he kept on talking. He said, they got the Earl on sale. And I said, okay, how can a human be on sale? As he kept going, Dr. Phil, I realized he was trying to say oil. Now, did I correct my neighbor? No, I did not.
No.
I said, well, you know what? When you go to NTB and get Earl put out, I need the synthetic Earl for my car too. So yes. So dialect also plays a role when teaching the kids to read and read phonetically. It does. It absolutely does. Yes.
Yeah, I guess it's from where you're from.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Well, this is absolutely fascinating, and it is an epidemic issue of illiteracy. It's costing us money. It's costing people quality of life. It's costing people longevity in their lives. And I thought it was so fascinating what you shared with us when we talked before. There's so much more to talk about. with regard to this. I hope you'll make time to talk to me again, because I think there's just so much more to talk about with regard to this. And I think you are fascinating and entertaining, and I would love to have you back again.
Doc, I'm enjoying it. I'm telling you, we're talking about literacy. Oh, my area.
I can imagine the convention you have, the meeting you have. I bet you it is the best they ever go to.
Doc, it really is. It really, let me tell you this. I'm not just saying it because I'm saying it, but I'm saying it. It's something that I've always wanted when I was like truly in the classroom. I always wanted to go somewhere where I would be energized and also get good information. We bring dynamic speakers. And of course, I'm there having a great time. Someone said I should start doing comedy sets. I don't know what that means though, but anyway, I've just enjoyed it. I'm enjoying bringing both together, a little entertainment to motivate you, right? To want to stay in this field. And then I'm giving you that good content knowledge of how to be an effective teacher. I'm not selling anything. I'm just trying to show you and give you information of how to teach those babies how to read. Yeah. If I get you motivated, look, Doc, if I get them motivated, right? And they feel good about teaching, regardless of how little the pay is, they may stay in the profession. So we will not have this warm body issue. If I can get more teachers to say, you know what, I can do another year. I can do another year.
You bet. Yeah. Listen, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Thank you for talking to me today, and you promised to do it again. I'm going to hold you to it.
Oh, yes, sir. I've enjoyed it.
Dr. Ingrid, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.